Hey there, friends. This is Sarah Mastriani-Levi. I'm so happy to be with you again for episode 4 of our Healing Conversations. I'll be joined tonight and always with my dear friend, William Brown. And tonight we're going to be having a conversation around healing language and exploring what healing language is. How do we create it? How do we sustain it? How do we back out of it when we've done something that doesn't sound quite right? How do we recognize what it feels like? And the different ways that silence both serves and harms in different situations. So, William, I invite you to join me and let's dive in. Hey there.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm excited to talk about this. You know, it's funny as we have our little briefing before we start recording, I think we try and prepare topics or general topics, or someone writes in and says, hey, can you speak on this? And we kind of throw it back and forth about how we feel about it. And today, as we came together to talk about this, there was a very clear feeling that even though there were all these words, that overall what we wanted to do more than anything was to address how words can both be healing, right, and to really add something to the conversation, because so often we know the conversation that's existing. We talked about some issues that are outlying, and they got dichotomies of rightness within each end of those spectrum,
right.
And yet here we are. So let's dive in and hear what you have to say about it and where we go from there.
Yeah, I know. I so much appreciate this, because I can remember as a kid, I don't know why my childhood is showing up on this. And I guess mainly because that's when we first get language, when we're introduced to language. And so as a shy kid and not saying much, and if I said something, it had to be, like nice words, right? Not bad words and all that. So there was this commitment to be like a good kid, right? And say things, and there became a point, I don't know, maybe the teenage years. It's really strange how this is all coming up, but how the teenage years, that there was a lot of other language being brought in. And then I saw how words can hurt and harm and things. And there's a lot of things that, someone could say something, and the words are not coming, but it didn't feel nice. It sounded nice, but it didn't feel nice.
You said new language was coming in. Where was it coming in from?
Yeah, I think, as teenagers, making up language that we've heard that we weren't able to talk about in front of our parents or adults, right? So we're just trying it on each other, right? You think that's bad. This is what my dad said, right? It's all that other kind of stuff. It's like, whoa, what's going on? But it just felt like there was this other way of showing up, and there were more words out there than, I guess, just the nice words and the pleasant things. And I just feel for myself that, I want to be, I want to do no harm, right? In my language, in my speaking, in my actions. But in some cases, it feels like I have no say, because I have no say what words, what meanings, what stories are connected to the words that I use, or the words that you've heard. And I can say something that I would feel that is a loving word, right? or not a bad word, or, right, difficult, that may cause a great deal of harm for you or someone. and not being able to really deal with that. And I guess for me, I think it's come with age. This is, I guess, the beauty of age, as being 53, right? To say that now I acknowledge that I have no say, right? But I am mature enough to clean up any harm.
Okay.
And so it's like, I did not intend, because there was many conversations with, my wife or my family that's like, well, you said something horrible. And it's like, well, I didn't mean it. And that's it. That's the end of, that's all I need to say. But I recognize now that that's not enough.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with my intent.
Right.
It
What did
is
you
just
hear? What did
right.
you feel?
Right. And just be there with that and kind of really know. So the next time that, even without intent, there's an awareness.
Mm-hmm. As you say that, I think two primary thoughts come up for me. One, and they both link back to either childhood memories or childhood awareness as well. One is, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Right. Oh, yeah. I remember that.
And at what point do you get to say things that are not nice in order to do some healing?
Wow.
And can we say them in a way that's nice, that still does the healing? Or, is there an allowance for not nice words in order to do healing? And the second thing that comes to me is the idea of, as language develops, I think about, studying different languages from different countries. And when you think of the languages, a lot of the Asian languages that use characters as opposed to phonetic lettering systems.
Right.
So they have, when you say that word, there is a picture in that character that immediately connects. But as non-character language learners, and that could be misinterpreted as well, but non-character, alphabetic, phonetic language learners, we have a tendency to, when you learn a new word, you have somebody will use it in a sentence or use it or point to something, house, and that's a house. And then the picture of a house is the first impression. So from then on, a house is always based on that initial exposure to that word.
Right.
So when it's a noun that is a physical item, oh, that's what a microphone looks like. So I'll always recognize that. But when it's a feeling, like caring or kind, usually it's used with a person or someone that embodies that character. So that is kind of like the memory. Oh, do you remember so-and-so was such a kind woman? Kind. Oh, how did that make me feel? How does that resonate in my body? And I think that the meaning of some of those emotions change over time. Sometimes we see where we were disillusioned, and other times it deepens. I think when we feel love and hear the word love as a child, hopefully it's something very comforting, and you go through the whole agape to the whole range of eros to all of the different ways that love can show up in the meanings of love. So those are the two kind of sentiments that play as in my mind as you brought up language and how it shows up.
Right. No, I totally get that. I didn't realize that it would cause something within me about the flashcard of the house, right?
Okay.
For me, I grew up in the inner city projects, so it was like row houses, connected. They're like poorly designed townhouses, I guess. If there's a comparison, right? But on the flashcard, is this single family home, right?
Mm.
That's a house, you know?
Yeah.
And so as an inner city Black kid, when I would see that and I look at my house, I don't live in a house.
Mm.
I don't have a home, right? I don't, there was, because like you were saying, the picture that's associated with it. And so
Mhm.
there was always this less than or anything. So there was this, this disconnect, and now this rub, this healing that needed to happen for me to kind of look at what a house is. And it's not just the picket fence and the windows and the, and the red door and all, all that kind of stuff, what's ever on that flashcard that I can remember as a 5-year-old.
Mm.
But really, it's kind of funny, because when you were saying that there's a lot of different cultures that use pictures, characters, as their language, um, and we use phonetics. However, we kind of like make up the damn pictures, right? It's like, so we're
Yeah.
still, it's, so there is not this shared picture,
Mm.
of it. And so then we have, so it's a
It's like your
wonder why
first
there,
exposure to whatever the picture is you created.
right. And so it's a wonder that we even communicate with each other, right? That we can have a coherent conversation with each other
Hmm.
because we're like all over the place.
Yeah.
Wow, it's like I said, it's fascinating, and it's so predictable.
Mm.
It's so, for me, it seems like so obvious. Well, it's a wonder that we have so many problems communicating, and there's so much harm that we create with each other. Just look at our language and see.
For sure. Absolutely. Um, I don't know why this is coming to me as you're talking about this, but I can remember a few years ago, when my kids left homeschooling and first started school. I really liked to be outside the school and pick them up, and I figured out some way around the car line that I could park somewhere else, and then I could just greet them at school and not have to sit there for hours and hours. And so I'd stand in the line of a lot of the families that lived closer to the school. Um, and the language that I kept hearing again and again about their homes, like if I was to meet somebody, I would be like, "Oh, where do you live? Where's your home?" I don't know if I would ask them where their home was specifically, but where do you live? And
Hmm.
everyone in that line was trading the phrase, "Where do you stay at?"
Hmm. Wow.
Which feels
Hmm.
so much more transient to me than
Great.
"Where do you live?" And the
Hmm.
response was always, like if someone said, "Where do you stay at?" I would say, "Oh, I live in such and such." And the response was, "I stay at
Right.
such and such of a
Wow.
place," which is also another,
Hmm.
I don't know if we're going to go into what home means and what that picture means and what, I don't know, how does that land for you?
Right. I think I can't remember if I would use where I stay, right? I don't know. Um, the but I that is a very familiar um, term, or something,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it is that, that, I don't want to say housing insecurity, or or something, or just kind of, um, there's movement to it, or there is, um, I must said something, sometimes my feelings about the social structure that we have in our country. But we lived in public housing, and there's public subsidies, and so welfare and other things that were a part of my upbringing and everything like that. And I in college I did, a speech in speech class about welfare and public housing and all that other kind of stuff, and I said that in it, and there's a part of me that still believes that it most of the times welfare or subsidies of that nature doesn't feel like what are they called, a safety net. It quickly turns into a hammock, and people, I mean, there was not that many minorities in my class, and I think I was the only black male, but people were like offended. This was, I mean, so this was like in the 90s, so like early, late early 90s, late 80s type of thing. So, and people are like offended that I would even say anything like that. And so the reason why that came up for me right now within the context of stay, for where I stay versus where I live, is that in our language, or in my mom's language, she was always doing something or working hard, not just to maintain this environment, but to go somewhere else, to get out of here. So this is not where I live. This is where I currently stay. This is where this thing. So there was this. It wasn't even. I guess it was an upward mobility type of thing, but it wasn't. It didn't feel like. It didn't feel like an inspiring thing. It was more like, the story of the crabs. I don't know, that just came to me, where the crabs are pulling, the other, crab tries to get out and the other crabs pull them down type of thing. And so there was that feeling. And so, in my 19-year-old mind, public housing and welfare, and all that was a sentence. It was, it was causing me to stay here, and I had to fight that mentality so I could get through college or get through my life and all that other kind of stuff. And so it just really felt to me that when people would say, this is where I stay, it was letting themselves know and other people know that I'm not always going to be around here. I'm not always going to be living in this situation or anything like that, without saying that, because if you said that, then you would be considered that, what, you think you're better than us? You think you're, you think, who do you think you are? And, so me as a kid, I can remember saying to people, this sucks. I can't wait to get the hell out of here. Right? It's like, you think you better than us? Yeah, I do. Right. But that's what immature people do. Right. But it is that type of thing within, with our language to create. I don't even know if it's, I think what's coming up for me right now is that there was always wanting more, but not knowing how to kind of articulate that, not having the picture, right? And so creating the language that would kind of get that. And most people, like, I don't say most people like you, had no idea the rationale for using that language versus this is where I live.
It's interesting. I haven't really talked with you too much about my own upbringing, but we moved a lot growing up, and definitely didn't have definitely had lots of different living arrangements in different cities and different things that had to do with my parents' work. And yet somehow I had associated that. I think that there was like, I'm kind of jumping around, but like when we would do the tests and stuff for school, the government standardized tests and stuff,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and they would say, choose which one is grammatically correct. For me, I would just imagine my parents speaking, even though they had a very transient mindset and just always thinking of like getting out, not getting out, but like leveling up. I think that that's a human condition,
Right.
to desire to level up.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I knew that if I didn't have to like sit and study verb conjugation and stuff. I would just imagine my parents speaking and how they would say it. And I would be able to pass those tests with flying colors because my parents had learned grammatically those things to say. And so for me, when I heard people say, where do you stay at? I never heard a transient mindset. I heard, oh, they've been raised to say it that way.
Oh, wow.
As opposed to where do you live, which to me was, where do you stay at, ending with it, at the, you don't end many sentences with at in proper English, right? So,
Right.
And to me, that felt very temporary. And so I think that there was some level of like, are all these people in motion? Like, where do you stay at?
Right.
And, or do they just, is that how they were raised to say where it took me some time to realize that it was a new school, and I didn't know if they had kind of like moved into that area to be able to be close to be within the limits for that school. It took me a while to kind of understand it. So I wasn't sure if it was grammatically incorrect or if they were in movement, or if that, I had no thought in my mind that was an indicator of upward mobility. It was just like, oh, we just stay here for now and we just stay there.
Right. Wow. I think, and it's all, it's like how we use language, and I think really until that just came to me, I never really thought about that, but I know that there was something within me that wanted the place to live versus a place to stay. I didn't know what that was all about, right? You know, even if like I said, because I was familiar with that language,
but
right?
it's also languaging, right? Because even when we
Right.
were in transient situations, or I stayed with my parents
Right.
for a period of time when I came back to the States, I didn't say I'm staying with them. I said I'm living with my parents and maybe there was some
Right.
level of shame within me of like, oh, this is what I need to do for a year in order to be able to get out on my own. But I never saw it as just like staying is what you do on vacation.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right. Wow.
or something temporary. So that's really interesting language that I had no idea that we were going to go there just now.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a part of my business that I'm developing. I want to have what some people call location independent. So I can I
That's
can
right.
work anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And I I was talking to one of our friends, Angie Cole,
Mm-hmm.
who's in all intents and purposes is nomadic.
Right.
But with her, she's totally different from any of the other nomads that I know, and it's fascinating that within our community there's so many. It's like I went from I know no one that lives like this to all it takes is one summer camp, and it's like, oh my God, there's like a community of people that are nomadic. But the reason why she came to mind is the way she looks at where she stays. She doesn't stay anywhere. She decides where she wants to live, and she immerses herself in a country, a city for months at a time,
Right.
because of her interests. And I had to rethink, me using that. Hey, I want location independence. So for me, in my mind, it was so I can stay wherever the hell I want, right?
Mhm.
So I can not live, but but stay,
Yeah.
and kind of come and go when it's like, what, I'm done with that. But really, to really look at living, creating a life uh,
Mhm.
where I am, and really, really understand that. So yeah, and it's like I said, and it's all in language. And like I said, it
Mhm.
could mean something. It could mean absolutely nothing. It could be, hey, everybody in my family said stay, so I say stay. We didn't think about it any more than that, right?
Mhm.
And just kind of to go from there. And I think when we talk about healing language, or language, or just kind of, it's in some cases, it's really not, for me, what's coming up for me right now, it's not the language that's healing. It's the stories. you know it's like healing stories, right? Right.
Right.
It's right. It's one. And how does a story heal, right? It
Mhm.
is by sharing, and and sharing the emotions within it, and everything like that. And the more that for me, there is this peeling away from. There is, I don't know if you mentioned it last week, in our conversation about our memory, about every time we
Yeah, I did.
remember something, that it changes, right? Right?
It
It's
changes
like,
to that memory of that day that you're remembering it with the
right,
perception of, right, whatever it is. Yeah.
right. And it's just like, it's like I'm like questioning my childhood. It's like,
Mm.
what really happened, right? Right?
Yeah, we all do this. So, that lens that suddenly it comes into focus, and then somebody's like, "Oh, look at my periscope," or whatever it's called. Um, you know, when I decided to become location independent, it wasn't about where I would stay or where I would live. For me, it was about where I would work, that I could work anywhere, I could be anywhere. And the living and the staying bit was just like, oh, well, that'll happen alongside.
Right.
And it's interesting how, you handed your lens to me, and I saw for a second, oh, because I could stay wherever I wanted to. And for Angie, it's so I can be wherever I want to. And for me, it was like, whatever happens around me, I can work wherever I need to be.
Right.
And it's interesting, like, how many other things do we have, memories, do we have words that serve these new concepts that come in, or new languaging that comes in to both our own lexicon, to our culture, and how each of us have, just like when we saw the house card when we were little and we
Right.
created a memory, when new language comes in, what does it mean when it shows up? What was your memory? What was your first memory of, a current topic that
Right.
shaped the way you would look at that entire topic? Do you have one topic that you have a memory of?
Hmm. No. No. Nothing's like. Um, I mean, I know. Um, I know friends and interactions. What that means, right? Right, and what that
Mm-hmm.
means, and what it doesn't, and all that other kind of stuff. And I think Facebook has reshaped that, for us. But I really believe what's coming up for me right now, and I'm trying to stay present, and then try to follow this along. Is that it is the suffering that we cause is that we're holding on to that first image that we
Mm-hmm.
got in our language.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of, you could have caused harm to yourself and other people within that group. And it's like, well, we stay here. It's like, what do you mean where you stay? Where do you live? Right. It's like, and then it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why are you so aggressive? Right. Type of thing. And then there's a question of what I'm saying. You're correct. You're correcting my speech or don't, whatever, you're all that other kind of stuff. And then it causes something just because it goes against that image of what is, what that
Mm-hmm.
house means, right?
Right.
Type of thing. And so I'm really recognizing right now for myself, it's not just let anybody say anything, right?
Right.
But in some cases it is, right? Right.
Right.
Right. It's like, it's like, all right. Um, that's how it occurs to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's how living shows up for you. That's how, and within a relationship, we can unpack what that means. We can
Mm-hmm.
take that to another level. But there's an extended grace or something that allows us to show up and not um, struggle or fight because the images that I have or the stories that I have connected to the language that I use is something totally different than what you have. And I want to
Mm-hmm.
hold you to that.
Yeah. I have a love-hate relationship, I think as many of us do, with the idea of mirrors that are held up to us so that we can get
Mm,
a reframe of things, especially when the love relationship is when it's gentle enough that I can say, oh, I get it and make a change. And the hate is
mhm.
like, oh shit, that's me. I'm the one guilty of that. And I didn't even realize it. Right.
Right.
Those are the two ends of the spectrum. And I was reading something the other day, and this kind of touches back on the standardized testing and like all this school stuff that shows up in public schools. I always did pretty well in grammar. I was able to write coherent sentences without getting,
Mhm.
marks for misspellings or whatever. Thank God that there's Grammarly now because I've forgotten half of what I knew before.
I know.
Um,
I don't even try anymore. It's just like, all right, somebody will figure this.
but what I read, I think it was probably like last week or the week before, was another level of white privilege that you might not realize that you're holding on to is if you are a grammar Nazi.
Hmm.
That is because it was made available and it was readily spoken in that way, that
Wow.
you feel entitled to correct other people, and that's a level of that other people were trying to survive, and you're trying to decide whether there's an apostrophe there or not for it to be like a coherent statement or not.
Right.
And every time I see that someone does misspellings, I'm like, okay, I think I know what you mean, but here's how it should, like, I'm doing that game in my head, and I'm like, where the heck do you get the audacity to think that you know better just because you know the rules of the game? But the rules of that game were entirely created, like the
Right.
system is working,
Right.
were entirely created to create that distance between those who can speak the language and those who have just
Right.
not taken the time to learn it, or whatever the judgment is. So that's
Right.
another place where I catch myself now every time I'm like, oh, that's what they meant.
Yeah. We're so far removed from the King's English, right?
Right.
But people
So
still act as if, yeah, oh wow. That is really,
it's a
you
mirror I
know,
keep catching myself with, and I'm kind of feeling a lot of shame about like how I made myself feel educated before
right.
because I knew those things when it was just the privilege of having that executed in front of me on the daily. So that's why it became norm for me.
Wow. Hmm. Oh, the nuances. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
The I'm still, am I right? The one reason why I question my, my author label is because, I remember having an English teacher saying, you add a comma when you take a breath. And so I have so many run-on sentences. It's like, just end it, right? It's just like comma, 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 and took a breath, took a breath. It's like, okay, we want to end this sentence here
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. So yeah, so that's my cross to bear. So I don't know what the hell, but
This is
it's
why
it's
editors exist. Somebody
right,
knows this stuff.
right. It's like, but I think it goes back to what we make it mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's if you know my story, my language, my commas, my punctuations, all of those things. If I know and I had access to, because when you were telling the story of your standardized tests, hey, just what would my mom or dad say? Okay, I can just kind of go with that, and that'll kind of get me through. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
there were. I would not. Um, I don't think I'm exaggerating, but we all know about our memory, especially being so far removed from it. I would go days in not speaking to my mom,
Mm.
seeing my mom, coming in, she says what she says, and just kind of keep it moving, as a single parent, working um, doubles or all that other kind of stuff, and just kind of do that. So really, um, there wasn't a lot of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's when I would get to the test, it would be study.
Mm-hmm.
It's,
Yeah.
if I didn't, because it wasn't just what I was getting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that privilege? Is that excess? Is all those things that um it's like we're on a level we're on a level playing field, and we're not.
Mm-hmm.
you, you know
Yeah.
and it's just like, I didn't use a lot, and this is kind of crazy. I guess we're talking about language, so so I can make my confessions. I was fascinated with slang more
Mm-hmm.
than using it. It's like, that is very creative, right? That's creative way to speak, right? Oh, this is what this means, and I was like the slang detector or something, and kind of like, oh, okay, this is what the hell they're talking about.
Slang detector.
Right? I mean, it's like, I wouldn't say anything, but it's like, oh, okay, so I can, and I would have, I would have some non-black friends, will ask, hey, what does this mean? Oh, this is what that means. It's not like I used it, right?
Yeah.
But there was enough people around me using it to know it. And I think there was this period of, hey, I'm not going to use this, right, language, but I know what it means, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it now it makes me better than,
Mm.
because, and I said, on my show probably a month ago now, um, it's about, because someone asked if they wanted to say a bad word. They want, and they're like, oh, I don't know if you're okay with that. And I was like, look, within a conversation, words come up, and that's, I'm good. All it will take is different, a different setting, and on the YouTube channel, I'm cool. But what I recognize is that, and I said within the conversation that a number of years ago, maybe less than 10 years ago, I believed if you said like not nice words and colorful words, as they say, I thought less of you
Hmm.
because there are a lot of words out there, and this is what you choose to use says more about you than to anything else, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And, until I went through some things, and I realized that sometimes those, some of those colorful words will get to the point
Right. Very
really
appropriate.
quickly.
It's if those are your only words, that's where the
Right.
problem exists. If it's an
Right.
expansion of your lexicon,
Right.
it's just some more words.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go and get this one, right?
Right.
And I think, with creating, I can remember as my kids, my adult kids would tell me now, but I didn't know it. It's like, mommy yelled, dad didn't need to yell. Dad, if, stern voice, just kind of serious, you knew something was wrong, or something else was going to happen, and all that. And my kids were saying that, yeah, I mean, I think, as kids, I think you yelled like, once or twice, and I don't think it was like at anybody. It was just like to the room, and just kind of like let everybody know that dad is pissed off right now. Right? It's just like, and it's like scatter. It wasn't directed at anyone, but everyone knew. Everyone knew.
Directional rapid fire.
Right. But I mean, so, so because I didn't want to create harm with my kids, I didn't want them to feel that my disappointment, my rage, my, you know, you know, anger would ever show up on them. And in some cases, sometimes I felt that I was disengaged emotionally from them because, because I didn't show a lot of, lot of emotions, or something, because I wanted to keep them. One, that was a choice that I made to keep them in check. And I wanted to keep the quote unquote bad ones in check, and it caused me to keep them all in check.
Yeah.
And
So
so everything was muted.
this kind of leads back to something that you and I both share this super dependable, super consistent, whatever we've committed to character.
Right.
And we were talking about how that has both served us and harmed us in the evolution of our language and expression and personal evolution. From the place of both being silent, sometimes that silence allows us to kind of sidestep and watch, and just kind of creates a really nice non-reactive background so that we can actually scope out what's going on.
Right.
And sometimes our silence is like not serving the overall situation because it's being indecisive, but we maintained our consistency or our
Right.
dependability of not being the one in the rage or the one in the emotive state.
Right.
And we were talking earlier about how being able to emote is just, I mean, that's really connecting with the divine feminine on that we all hold within us, is being able to step into that river of emotions and say, yes, this is what I'm feeling right now. I'm no longer sitting on the shore. I will feel this. I will go through this. I will say the words that I need to say. And maybe that will shape your memory of how that word is represented in the future, but it will not be that I didn't care, or that I just remained consistent. I'm allowed to have those emotions sometimes and still be consistent with how I show up for other people. I can show up and be upset with someone else. I mean, that's not our situation, but like, to be able to show up. You've seen me at times where, I'm generally pretty consistent in how I show up for people. And yet you've seen me blubbering, crying once when I talked with you about a situation that really just hurt me, and I felt safe to be able to show up that way. And yet I think, oh, I don't want people to see me losing myself. And yet it probably shaped the fact that you saw a different human side of me in those moments.
Yeah, I think the one thing that because I mean, it's new language of saying that I have an unhealthy relationship with consistency. I mean, that's new.
Mm.
A few years ago, that was like, I'm dependable, right? It's like, that's, you can count on me, all that other kind of stuff. And that's, that type of thing. And the more that I embrace that, this, I want to say non-masculine, energy. I don't know how it's like, instead of
we all have the divine feminine and the divine masculine in us. So
right. And I recognize that. And it was like the masculine energy in me was like, we got to say masculine, it's like, don't say, the type of thing. And it's like, the more that I embrace the divine feminine within me, the more that I am able to not just show my humanity, but embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in some cases I have been denying my humanity and then being pissed off that people don't connect with me. You're right, or don't, or don't feel like I'm, accessible, to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just fascinating to me that I was creating this stoic,
Mm-hmm.
thing, this person that, bailed people out, saved a lot of this, this superhero complex that I have. But it really caused me to lose myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, the only way that I was able to get to the place of healing in that area is, to have one of our dear friends. We have so many dear friends, our mutual friends of Rick Charlie, that reminded me lovingly that, I am Batman and I'm not Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
You get to be both.
yeah.
That's still not landing well with you.
Right. No, it is. I mean, it's really a part of my labels conversations that, I am a nice guy and I'm not a nice guy. And it's like, sometimes it's like, ouch. I mean, maybe I need to say that in reverse. I'm not a nice guy and I'm a nice guy. But that one, and that feels better. But it's like, the reality is that sometimes you don't know which one is going to show up.
And you never know how it's going to land.
Right.
Even when you come with really good intentions and you say things. As you were saying that, I was also reflecting, as a woman in the business world and as a coach, that you're so often the person that, both of us with our clients, the people that lean and depend on us, and holding that space. And how does it allow them to open up more to us when we embody our emotions and are able to emote in front of them, as opposed to women being successful in a very masculine, not that coaching is entirely masculine, don't misunderstand, but the business world in general has been, to be successful, you have to be stoic on some level. I mean, I think back to the Kavanaugh cases where they were saying, oh, women are so emotional and men, and then the memes that went back and forth of Kavanaugh crying and, the witness who was very stoic and able to really speak her case very eloquently, and just how we've made it almost wrong to emote in situations, even when they are emotionally influenced, and I'm leaning into this idea about being dependable and being consistent and still having a place for emotions to exist.
Right.
How does that occur so that we can both be Batman and not Batman? So that's for anyone who's listening will know that's a great costume that you wear at the Good Life Project camp from time to time, and had kind of adopted that identity. And
Right. And
Batman
it's,
Bill.
yeah, it just really, um, it really caused me to see not just who I am being, but who I'm not being.
Mm.
And so that's why it shows up in so many other areas in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when I look at my marriage, when I look at my kids, when I look at, business relationships, and when I look at, my friendships, it's like I was so bent of being consistent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Showing up a certain way, with having no understanding or no appreciation who I wasn't being.
Mm. That's powerful. Say that again. Just go back through that again.
I think I was so, um, hell bent and concerned about how I was showing up and who I was being. I had no awareness of who I wasn't being.
Can you now put language to who you weren't being that needed to show up?
I think, bravery was the first one that wants to show up brave. You aren't being brave. It's like, okay, dude. All right. I got it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I wasn't resourceful. I wasn't grateful.
Mm-hmm.
It was because because fear, that's one of my favorite quotes. I have two favorite quotes, and two or three favorite quotes, and one of them is, Nelson Mandela's, may your choices be like, they not fear, right? No, not fear, or the, I don't know why the quote's not coming to me, but it's basically, don't allow fear to make choices for you. That's it. And most of my life, the fear was making a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, the what if wasn't a what if possibility. It was, what if this kind of blows up? What if this, what if you make this person mad? What if what if you fail? What is, and it was just like, I'm not going to do anything. And so I was not showing up, but, within that. And so yeah, just really having a level of compassion. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were saying to me how I occurred to them as, something, and I'm still kind of taking this on, so I can't believe that I'm saying it without really owning it yet. But she called me a compassionate witness,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh, okay, and she's like, William, you gotta,
That's chewing
you
that
can
for a
take
minute.
it, right?
Yes,
Right.
chewing that. A compassionate witness. I would concur. But what about that doesn't?
It's
What does it incite in you?
what it. I think there. So I'll break the two words apart, and the reason, and so I can do that. And I know when you put them together, there's something totally different. But I'll take them two apart first. Um, Even though compassion is one of my core values,
Mm-hmm.
there's this, many times there is this feeling that I am not enough within my compassion, right? That there is more. I can be more compassionate. I can, so it's like, is that enough? Is that all compassion that you have? It's like, that's the question that I ask myself. So it's like, okay, I can do more. And it's like, I'm pushing myself
Have you
to be
turned it
more.
into a count noun? Do you know what I mean? Like, why have you decided that it has, like, we don't say we have lots of sugars, we have sugar. We
Right.
don't say we have lots of compassions, we have compassion. So you've
Right.
created like this box of like the limitation of what compassion can hold.
Absolutely. And so,
Just
look,
saying not enough.
that's the work. That's the work. So feeling that there is, I'm the bare minimum of compassion in this situation, and this is an overflow of compassion and all that other kind of stuff. So yeah. So the compassion is that even though that's important, it's always showing up, there is still this question about that. So that's the one thing that I'm dealing with when that came up. And the witness is just what I see, because I am always, I don't want to say questioning, but there is a concern because I'm a witness, right? Because I see a lot. And sometimes when you articulate as a witness what you see, people who don't see or don't want to see kind of make you wrong for seeing what you see. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So me, there's this balance. You put them together, and there's this. All right, do I have enough compassion to witness? To be the mirror for people, for myself. Do I? Is this? And it's like, oh, that just seems like so much work, right? But the crazy thing about that, and what she said to me, she says, "You are just that. You don't have to work at that."
That's right. That's right. But I think the belief pattern, as I'm listening to you, what I'm hearing that you're not saying is that to be the witness is to talk about the things that we see. And so often, through all of our lineage, through our ancestral lineage, we don't talk about certain things.
Right.
We're like, you might see it, but you're not going to mention that you saw that.
Right.
Because then you would have to deal with the emotions and sharing those emotions with someone else. And to be the witness is to be present and to acknowledge and to see completely, albeit through your lens, through my lens, through whomever's lens.
Right.
But it's to witness it and to be willing to speak about it and to have compassion that, oh, wow, that must have been interesting. That must have been difficult. Right. It seems like that's how we can actually have that compassionate language of, I'm going to try and connect with you by saying, to me, it seems like that was a difficult situation. The other person may have witnessed it and said, no, it was great. We had a good time.
Right.
So you give them space by witnessing, by using that languaging of it seems like, or that's interesting. Tell me more about that.
Right.
But suddenly we're allowed to talk about what we see. And it's no longer, those are not the things we talk about in public.
Right.
And I think that really embodies so much of what your show is about. Having those conversations, disconnecting from what was once not allowed and connecting to what is allowed now. So I would encourage you to not get wrapped up in the amount of compassion and the amount of allowance of witnessing, and just continue to be that compassionate witness. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful title.
Right. I did tell her, I was like, don't worry, I'm not going to go get any business cards with it.
Next step, you never know. What's your address again? I think I could see that.
Right, you never know. This has really been great. I think there's the healing that has come with this for me. If I can wrap up this, is that there's this the more that I disconnect or allow things to just share that something that may be difficult or maybe that I have a story around, the more that I'm able to let that go, the more that I can not just find the humor in it, but I could find a level of soothing that it's not this brittle, hard, piercing type of thing. There is this. It's still present. I'm still aware, but there is how I approach it and how I look at it is totally different. And I think that's the language,
Mm-hmm.
the healing language part of it for me. That's what I got out of this conversation. It was, like I said, it was like a wide ranging from images and different things. But like I said, I never really thought about that with language and not having characters, but the flashcards, and it's like, okay, this is what this means. Or you point and you kind of, this is the people, the people are the feelings and all that other kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just kind of go from there. But there's so many stories and so many things that come along with that because we don't have a shared picture or understanding of the picture. So we
Mm-hmm.
create our own and then hold ourselves and sometimes others to those.
To that standard, right, of whatever our picture was in our mind.
Right.
I really enjoyed this conversation. I mean, I think that we always make headway. I'm not sure where we're going, but we're making headway and just kind of sifting through the water of everything that's going on right now and trying to find our healing moments within it. And I love the fact that we don't have a scripted bullet point list of things that we need to touch upon, and it can just evolve like this. And how each of our individual stories show some level of humanity that I think that other people, I pray that other people can relate to and evolve from, sharing our own individual lenses. I really want to thank everyone for taking time to listen and to comment and to share. If this really resonated for you, please share it with someone that you feel like you either want to improve your healing language with, or that they could improve their healing language, or that they just might know someone who would feel it was important as well. For us, we just want to be a support, and that's the only reason that we're having these conversations. So we bless you all and thank you all so much for joining us, and
Blessings.
look forward to seeing you next week.
Great.
Thanks.